Okay, we're currently live. Thank you.
Right. Okay, good morning and welcome everyone to this hearing. My name is Councillor Ahmed and I shall be chairing the meeting. My colleagues, Councillor Kelly and Councillor Glant, and I comprise today's subcommittee. Markesha Grant, who is the clerk to the subcommittee, will be minuting the meeting. Hatun Zeb is the legal advisor to the subcommittee. You will have all received or seen the agenda pack within which is contained the licensing officer's report with details of the application in section 1. To confirm, we are dealing with the premises license application made by Mr. Greg Fitzpatrick relating to Ealing Cricket Club. We note there has been representations objecting to the application from residents, and the panel has read those objections and will take that into account. There are also 3 of the objectors who have volunteered to speak, and those are Miss Marina Kalkanis, Councillor Oxley, and Julian Gartside, and obviously Greg Fitzpatrick is the applicant who will also speak. So in accordance with the procedures, I shall invite the applicant to present the application, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. Invite those who have made objections, to make their representations, answer any questions, and call any witnesses. At the conclusion of the hearing, the subcommittee, accompanied by the legal advisor and the committee democratic service officer, will retire to consider its decision. The decision will be given at the end of the meeting at approximately 1 p.m. today and confirmed in writing within 5 working days. If the panel cannot reach a decision today, you will be notified in writing within 5 working days of the panel's decision. So just before I start asking the applicant to present the application, can I ask the applicant to introduce himself, please?
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Gallant has his hand up currently. He may need to say something.
Councillor Glad, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. All I wanted to say was that due to the proximity of the ward I represent, I have had correspondence with some of the objectors on this issue, but I have not expressed an opinion, and I've merely directed them to what they need to do if they want to make representation.
Thank you. Thank you for this clarification, Councillor Glant. Okay.
Councillor Ahmed, just equally,
one second. Mr. Fitzpatrick, can you switch off your microphone, please, at the moment? Yes, Councillor Kelly, please go ahead.
Equally, I received emails from objectors before it became a hearing. I couldn't name the objectors or the contents, but it related to the cricket club. But I didn't respond to any of the emails. Thank you.
Thank you for this clarification. So just the introduction at the moment, if I can ask Mr. Fitzpatrick to introduce yourself, please, and your relationship to the application.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Greg Fitzpatrick. I've been a member of Ealing Cricket Club since 1970. I was elected a vice president in 2013. And in December 2023, I was invited to join the new board of trustees of Ealing Cricket and Social Club Limited.
That's fine. That's fine at the moment. I just needed to know who you are.
Thank you.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more attendees. One is Councillor Athena Zismos. Then I've got Councillor Jonathan Oxley and Julian Gartside and Marina Kalkanis. I take it these are the objectors. Is that correct? If not, you can speak. Okay, I've got the confirmation. Okay, with that, I'll start and I'll ask Mr. Fitzpatrick to present the application, please.
Thank you, sir. Ealing Cricket Club is regarded as one of the premier clubs in London, as well as in the country. We're currently the Middlesex Premier League champions, and during each summer we field 6 successful sides in the Middlesex League. We also play in national knockout cup competitions against teams from all over the country. This application to move from a club premises certificate to a full premises licence is intended primarily to provide the club with the flexibility it now needs to meet the diverse requirements of the business and to ensure that it complies with all the regulations of the licensing laws. The club has a small function room facility which is used to generate income for the club, which in turn supports the cricket activities. The club hosts all manner of events ranging from business meetings to birthday parties, engagements, wedding celebrations, funerals, wakes and sports presentations. The function room has long been used as a polling station for the Hanger Hill ward in the local council elections, the London Assembly and mayoral and general elections. The club is frequently asked for an extension of hours for many of these functions, and currently, due to the restriction on the number of temporary event notices available each year, the trustees believe this application will greatly assist in generating more revenue and profit, which will benefit the registered charity and thus provide ongoing and better facilities for the wider Ealing community. As a prominent club in London, we're now being approached to stage some major cricket events which do not necessarily involve our own teams. This means extending our hospitality to players, supporters and spectators from potentially far afield. We also stage tournaments involving junior teams from all over the borough and London. Historically, the club premises certificate was appropriate, but it has become apparent that our current club premises certificate is now outdated for the events and activities that take place at the club, is simply not robust enough for us to be confident of legal compliance at all times. Consequently, we are seeking this application for a new premises licence to provide the flexibility and certainty that we need to be fully compliant with the licensing laws. The club constitution specifies that it is a members-only facility, and the business relies heavily on the subscription income derived from such membership. It is therefore not the intention that the rules will be altered in any way, except to welcome players, visitors, supporters and spectators to the club for sporting events, and to permit guests and visitors to the club whilst using the function room facilities. The club is seeking the grant of a new premises licence with the facility to trade until midnight from Mondays to Saturdays, but would stress that it is not intended that the club will always be open until midnight during these times. Similarly, whilst the club is seeking permission to play live and recorded music until 11:30 p.m. Mondays to Saturdays, it is not envisaged that this facility will be required on occasion, will only be required on occasions and when requested for some functions and or special events. The club is aware that the Live Music Act of 2012 allows a premises licence holder to stage live music performances between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. if on the licensed premises and without the need of a special licence. The club is confident that its regulations and policies will comprehensively cover the requirements of the 4 licensing objectives. This will not change. Apart from the trustees, there is a professional management team in situ to oversee the day-to-day operation of the club. The trustees are not aware of crime or disorder within the current membership, nor does it believe that public safety will be in any way compromised as a result of this application. The trustees and management are committed to ensure that the club users remain aware of their responsibilities to treat the local residents and wider community with respect at all times. This includes keeping potential noise to an absolute minimum and always leaving the premises quietly and responsibly. Any reported incidents of public nuisance will not be tolerated, and action will be taken by the trustees and management against any responsible individuals. We have a fully trained staff who have all been DBS checked, and we operate a Challenge 21 policy in the bar. We have a dedicated trustee who is responsible for implementing our safeguarding policy. The club is pleased to note that there have been no representations to this application from the licensing authority, the police, or the environmental health noise pollution team. In consideration and respect of our neighbours, it is proposed that all external areas of the club will be closed from 11 p.m. and that all members and guests will remain inside the premises until they leave quietly at the end of the session. The club would be happy to accept this as a condition of the premises licence. The club sincerely hopes that the panel will be minded to grant this application and the much needed flexibility that a premises licence will provide. Finally, on behalf of the directors and trustees, I would like to assure our local residents that we are and will remain totally committed to ensuring that our members and guests behave with respect at all times, and we would always invite our neighbours to raise any concerns with us at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to open to questions. No, just for the attendees, clarification. You can ask a question at this time or clarification on what's been said. But you will have the opportunity to present your side of the case later on. So at this moment, question. Now, before I ask Councillor Glant to ask a question, I want a clarification. Mr. Fitzpatrick, did you say that 11 p.m. will be the last entry?
I didn't say that in my statement, sir. No.
So what did you say? You will. Did you say anything about 11 p.m. that you wanted to put as a condition?
I said that in consideration and respect of our neighbours, it proposed that all external areas of the club will be closed from 11 p.m. and that all members and guests will then remain inside. And I said that we would be happy to accept that as a condition, sir.
So when you say it will be all closed, what do you mean by that? That means nobody will be able to enter?
I didn't say that. So no, we wouldn't anticipate that people would be entering the club after 11 p.m. in any case. That wouldn't be appropriate. What we do have external areas at the club, sir. And what we're saying is we would close those areas to bring everybody inside the club on occasions when we're trading beyond 11 p.m.
So you mean they'll be all indoor?
They will remain indoors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to put it up for question, and I'll start by asking Councillor Glant to ask questions.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Greg, thank you very much for your presentation there. I've got a couple of questions on the application. You've applied for off and on sales of alcohol. Why would you need off sales of alcohol up until 12 o'clock at night? I've got a couple of other questions as well. So if you could,
sure,
do them all at once, and then you've also you've applied for sales of alcohol till midnight, and you put your closing times as midnight as well. Do you not? I mean, usually if you've got a public license, your closing time would be later than your last service of food or late night refreshment or of alcohol. And I don't know if you've got anything to say about that. The other question I had, which was about, and you've read the objectors, and I'll put it to you now, we'll probably hear about it later, but a lot of objectors have actually raised the spectre of broken bottles and that they've seen broken bottles outside the club. You've read that. Have you seen this? Have you taken any action against it? Have you engaged with residents about that problem? Thanks. Okay,
Mr. Fitzpatrick, you have 3 questions to answer. Go ahead,
yes,
please.
Sir. Yes. Okay, so I'll deal with the first one, the last one first. We do not serve drinks in bottles at the cricket club. We've never had any. What we do is we do have drinks in bottles that are served into a glass, and those bottles are then recycled through the recycling bins, etc. We don't have any experience of bottles in the road. We have, I told you that we have a professional staff, and our current club manager always goes at the end of any session, always goes outside of the cricket club and looks for any detritus or bottles, but there are none. We do not believe that the bottles that are being spoken about in some of the representations actually emanate from the cricket club. We think it's much more likely that they're walked up the road from Ealing Broadway late at night and then dumped by other people. But we do not believe that there are bottles coming from Ealing Cricket Club. In respect of question 1, the on and off sales, we, as part of the application, we ticked the box which said on and off sales. We've never had off sales before. I think it's something that we don't necessarily need in the future. And if it was appropriate that the off sales part of this application was removed, I don't think that would present us with a problem.
Thank you. Closing time.
Sorry?
Yeah, next, please.
Oh, yes, closing time. Yes.
Closing time.
I think what we believed on the application was that the bar that on the occasions when the bar was open until midnight, the last drink would be served at midnight, and then there would be drinking up time and people leaving the premises.
But you put a closing time of 12 o'clock. You see that, so you put a closing time at the same time as effectively your drinking up time. I don't think that is correct, and I think that we're anticipating that we're asking for an extension of hours to serve drinks until midnight, followed by drinking up time in the normal way. So what closing time? When would you close the premises? I would imagine that we would close. We would then everybody would be out of the premises by 12:30. So that's what you're proposing. Yes. Okay, thanks. That's fine for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next one is Marina Kalkanis. Your question, please.
Yeah, sorry, just turned my mic off. Yeah, so Mr. Patrick, you said the external areas will be closed at midnight. So I presume that means the seating area in front of the cricket pavilion and the function room that's in the open. So I presume those areas you intend to be open before 11 p.m. For people to use. How much of the grounds, does that include all of the cricket grounds? And are you aware of the fact that there's a remand home adjacent to the cricket grounds on the north side?
Yes, we're aware of the remand home. That's been there for decades. As I said, I've been involved with the club since 1970, and the remand home has been there for many years. It's never caused us a problem. The remand home is currently closed and being refurbished. I believe it's owned by the London Borough of Hammersmith, and not the London Borough of Ealing. It's never caused us a problem in the past, and we don't envisage it being a problem in the future. As far as the external areas are concerned, I am talking about the areas immediately outside of the club. But of course, if we're closing those external areas, we would also be closing the entire cricket field. So we would not allow anybody to be on the cricket field or the external areas where there's seating after 11 o'clock.
But you're saying you would allow it before 11 o'clock?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that would be members of the general public?
I beg your pardon?
And that could be just members of the general public?
Unlikely, I think, because we're not encouraging members of the general public, except to be spectators at cricket matches, and other people who attend the club who are not members of the club will be attending the club because they're attending a private function or similar.
Would they not be considered guests in that case?
Well, potentially the visitors to a function could be regarded as guests, as they are at the moment. But spectators to a cricket match would not necessarily be regarded as guests.
Okay.
And what concerns me is this raises the possibility of.
Question only, please. You will have your opportunity to present your case.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Athena Zismas, you've got a question.
Hi, can you, if you shut out all the external areas at 11 and you're open till technically 12:30, where the smoke is going?
There's an area immediately outside of the main door, which is undercover, where people can go and smoke. We do not have an awful lot of smoking members, I'm pleased to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gardside, you've got a question?
I have, yes. Regarding the clubhouse, is there any soundproofing?
There's no soundproofing in the club currently. No, it's an old building. It dates back to 1870, so no, there's no particular soundproofing as such.
Okay, thank you. I have a second question.
Yes, please.
You assured us that there was no intention to change the rules or the constitution of the club. But is there anything to stop somebody or a committee in the future instigating changes to the rules or the constitution? And supplementary to that, if that were the case, would the council or the neighbours have any say in that process?
As far as I'm aware, and I'm pretty definite on this. I'm 99.9% certain on this that the trustees, current and future, have absolutely no intention of changing the constitution of the club, which has been in place since 1870. This is a members club. It's very important that it remains as a members club. And as I said in my statement, the subscription income that is derived from the members as members of the club is vitally important to the survival of the club. I cannot see any reason why the constitution would be changed in any way at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just one last thing. I know from an email that I received from David Holt, who I believe is on your committee.
He's
he
the
talked
chair.
about the ever-changing needs of our business. I'm wondering what these ever-changing needs of your business are.
Well, as I said in my statement, the ever-changing needs are that as a premier cricket club within London and the country as a whole, we are always being asked as a premier club to stage events at the club which don't necessarily involve members of Ealing Cricket Club. So it could be clubs from all over the borough, the county or the country. As is now the case, we have in excess of 500 juniors who play cricket and get coaching at the club throughout the year, never mind about throughout the summer. There are junior cricket festivals and all sorts that we now hold at either our ground at Corfton Road or potentially our other ground at Pope's Field in Gunnersbury Avenue. And this is because we are a prominent place to be as far as the cricket world is concerned, and we feel that is a fundamental change to where we used to be when I was a junior member way back in the 1970s. The junior cricket was small fry compared to what it is now, and we are one of the premier sides in the borough, clubs in the borough, looking after an awful lot of juniors, and now being asked to stage senior cricket for major cricket events around the county and also the country.
Okay, thank you. The next is Councillor Oxley. You've got a question?
Yes. Hello to everyone. Just a quick question, Greg. I'm a bit confused about closing, and also then the point about closing the recording. and the
Councillor, could I just say I'm really struggling to hear you? I'm sorry.
You're buffering a lot, Councillor Oxley.
Speak and we'll see.
Yeah.
So, concerned about the conditionality around shutting the building, because if I understood your last answer about smoking, it seemed to suggest that between 11 and 12 people would be able to exit the building to smoke outside. How is that consistent with what you said earlier?
I would suggest that anybody can exit the building to either leave it, and as I said, there is an undercover area just immediately outside of the front door of the building where people could go to smoke. But this is absolutely diverse against the theory that we have of bringing people in so that they're not drinking and socialising outside. I don't personally believe that there is a problem here, and I don't believe it will cause any particular problem at all.
How do you propose to force this conditionality about closing the building if you're already allowing people to leave the building to smoke?
Well, we're not. We can.
It's just in front of the grassed area, which people can sit and at tables. People will be able to go outside and smoke, from what I'm gathering.
No. We will make it a condition that they can the undercover area immediately outside of the pavilion is the only place that they would be allowed to go and smoke whatever they want to, a cigar or a cigarette or whatever. But they would not be allowed to go out and sit in the external areas near to the grass area of the club.
But they would be outside the building?
Technically, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glad, you've got a question again?
Thank you very much, Chair, if I may. So, Greg, just to be clear about what you're saying, because you've applied for a public license here and then you're saying it will still be for members. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm a non-member. If say you had this license and I turned up at 10:30 tonight or 11 o'clock tonight and I turned up Cricket Club and said, can I come in and have a drink, please? Would I be admitted? All right. Second question. Well, if I may, second question is, if I rang up the club and said, I'm not a member, may I hold a wedding reception there? What would be the response? And the third question, slightly technical one about music, because you've applied for a license for that half hour between 11 o'clock and 11:30 for live music, recorded music and live music. Will it be amplified? What kind of noise limitation, sound limitation measures are you thinking of at the moment?
Okay. In terms of membership, we are members. Currently, we operate on a club premises certificate. So you should not be allowed into the club unless you are a member. Our staff should request that you should ask you if you are a member, and if you're not a member, then you would not be allowed into the club because you're not a member. So that would if you walked in at 10:30 at night and said, I want a drink, then you should be challenged and you should be told that you can't have a drink because you're not a member.
And that will carry on if this license, this is a public license, if this was granted.
Yes, it will carry on. It would carry on.
Okay.
We're not encouraging people to walk into our club as non-members. We want to retain our membership. Our constitution is sound and has been for 150 years. And our intention is that only members would be served.
Okay.
Your question about a function is slightly different, because if you phoned up and if you wanted to book a private function, then that is an occasion when we would allow you to book for a private function. We currently operate a system whereby the person who books a function becomes an associate member, and on that basis we can then hold a function, and their guests are deemed to be guests of the function are deemed to be the associate members' guests. We don't feel that that is robust enough, and we need the flexibility to be able to make absolutely sure that we are complying with the law completely.
And it's just a question also about limiting noise of live and recorded music out. As I said, we don't envisage that we will have a great deal, very rarely in fact, have live music or recorded music playing at levels, but there may be occasions during the year when this is required. And we are already looking at the possibilities of noise limitation equipment, etc., to combat that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marina Kalkani, you've got another question?
It is around the members question. Could Mr. Fitzpatrick, could you be a bit more clear about why you feel that the current situation? So I live at number 6 Corfton Road, and I've been to several events, including quiz nights, etc., at your club. I'm not a member, but I come under, I guess, your guest policy when it's a special event. Why do you feel that this is not adequate?
For all sorts of reasons. Number one, obviously, when you attend the club for a quiz night, etc., I assume you attend as a guest of a member, and that is deemed appropriate at this time. There are occasions, however, during the cricket season, especially, when we have a lot of spectators who come to the ground who are not members of the club. When an opposition side comes to play cricket, they are deemed to be guests of the club, as well as their families and supporters. But we cannot determine whether all of the people who attend a cricket match are actually opposition family, opposition supporters, or whether they're members of the general public simply watching a game of cricket. It opens up the question of an ordinary spectator walking into the club, and the confusion that can arise if that particular spectator walks up to the bar and asks for a drink. It could be assumed that they are supporters or family of the opposition, and there is a grey area there, and that presents a confusion, and that's why we want to be more robust and comply with the current legal requirements. And I should say also that in the past, you might not have been a legal attendee at the club, and this is exactly why we're applying for the change to the premises license. That's what we think we need, and that's what we've been advised that we need. So that's what this application is all about. It's not about late night drinking. It's not about live music. It's about compliance with the licensing laws as they stand at the moment, and the premises license is deemed to be far more appropriate than the current club premises certificate.
But so you would serve spectators up until 11:30 or no, midnight. Well after the matches have finished.
Highly unlikely.
But you would, but you want the facility to do it.
If a spectator had been watching a game of cricket, which generally finishes about 7:30 in the evening, it's highly unlikely that they would still be there at 11 o'clock. But I couldn't say that it would never happen.
Right. So you want the ability to do it. Okay.
We often get spectators who come to watch a game of cricket who subsequently become interested in joining our club, and then become members, and then everything is fine as far as we're concerned.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. I mean, your constitution is entirely your business, and I want to sort of focus on the this is a premises application. We don't have any objections from the local authority, police, or environmental health teams, but I wonder if you could speak to your recent temporary event notice applications, how successful they are, and talk about them generally, and sort of, is that sort of is it fair to say that's the framework that you're building on, the success of your TENS? So if we were to grant the application, is it in a sense to get rid of the need for TENS, i.e. these are the type of events you'll be running?
As it stands, we did in the last 12 months, we have not applied for that many temporary event notices. I think the last one we applied for would have been for our firework night, which is one of the largest firework nights in the borough. And we do that because of the bars that we have to erect outside of the clubhouse and around the ground in order to cope with the numbers of people that we have attending. This year was over 5,500 people, and there was no trouble. Absolutely, I've been the MC on the public address for over 50 years, and I have never experienced any trouble or disorder of any sort at that event. We often get asked for a later license when there are functions being booked for the function room facility, and often people will ask us whether we can extend our license until midnight, and if we deemed it appropriate, then we would do that. Under the current terms of the club premises certificate, we're only allowed to apply for 10 temporary event notices per annum, and that so we tend to try and use those very sparingly. Our function room facility is generally used, majority of the time is used on a Thursday, Friday and a Saturday. We don't tend to have a lot of functions on a Monday, Tuesday and a Wednesday. And occasionally the club the function room is used on a Sunday afternoon for christening parties, etc., birthday parties and so on and so forth. We've never had any problem in the club. We've never had any problem with functions, and we have a great relationship with the local police. So I suspect that we want to try and continue to trade on that basis, and have the flexibility that a later license would give us. But I would stress that we will not be open until midnight every day of the week. It will be rare occasions. So we just need that flexibility.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. Thank you. That's enough.
Okay, thank you. Okay, finally, before we go to the next step, just to clarify, Mr. Fitzpatrick, if I have read it properly, your application says open to the public until midnight, but you are saying it should be 00:30. Is that right?
I think so, sir. Yes, I think what we're looking to do is to be able to trade until midnight, and then with normal drinking up time. And I'm sorry that that our application has thrown up some confusion here. I wasn't aware of that. I apologize.
Sunday it says 22:30. So does that mean it's 11?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Kelly, you have another question, or is a legacy hand?
Legacy hand. I'll try and bring it down.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we are done with the first part of the application. Now I'm going to go to the objectors. and ask them to present their side. And I've got three names: Marina Kalkanis, Councillor Oxley, and Julian Gardside. So I'll start by asking Marina Kalkanis to present her side.
Right, thank you very much. So my concerns are I live 2 doors away from the cricket club on Corfton Road. So I walk past their gated entrance, pedestrian gated entrance on Corfton Road on a regular basis. There's a couple observations. We have 2 pubs on Haven Lane, both of which close at 11 p.m. With current licensing laws. Those pubs are busy in the nighttime with and they spill out onto the street because it's a kind of restricted area and the pubs are right up against the curbs. I believe that there's an opportunity for people to leave those pubs and wander up to the cricket club and continue to be served after 11 p.m. I think that's a risk. I think as a woman, I think that it's a residential neighborhood. The lighting is residential lighting outside the cricket club entrance, pedestrian entrance on Corfton Road. The other thing that's interesting is it's not observable from the staff. So the staff have no line of sight to the gate that opens onto the pavement. So they have no way of knowing what's happening once people have actually exited the pavilion building or the function room and made their way from there to the gate and then onto the street. So I feel that's very poorly observed. I think that it's inappropriate for members of the public who've been drinking to be spilling out into that area after midnight on a regular basis. And I think it's a risk for women who are walking in the area because it is secluded, it's poorly lit, it's an opportunity for people to loiter. And there are a few people around. And again, it's the public safety policy of Ealing Borough acknowledges that. And I have seen aggressive behavior outside the pub on occasion when there have been events, which is alcohol related. So I have experienced that myself. Again, it's not on the cricket ground premises, but it's people leaving. I'm particularly concerned about the application for off-sale supply of alcohol, and particularly again because of the fact that there's a school nearby and a remand home next door. And I think the idea that that alcohol could be sold to be consumed off premises up until midnight would be very dangerous to vulnerable people, children, and the bail hostel residents who are in the area. I think I also am concerned about this distinction between members. I think the behavior in general of attendees so far, we've lived here since 1997. In general, I would agree with Mr. Fitzpatrick that behavior of drinking in the club is generally considerate of the neighborhood because it is members and guests, and people who attend are aware that they're members and guests and behave accordingly. I think if that restriction is removed and people are no longer considered members or guests, I think it's much more difficult to regulate behavior. And I think it opens a lot more areas of concern for the neighborhoods as to what types of behavior, especially as the grounds are quite extensive and there's no physical barriers. So people are quite free to wander away from the grounds and be anywhere on the cricket club. And there are just residential wooden fences separating the boundaries of the clubs from neighboring gardens. And we haven't had incursions of people from the club into our gardens in the past. So it is possible to happen. So these are my main areas of concern. And then there's one final thing, which again has to do with this idea that it's no longer members drinking, which is that the club has a really active program for young people, which I think is very valuable to the community. The only toilets that are available for young people to leave are in fact within the clubhouse area, which is where the alcohol is served. And I do think that there's some safeguarding issues if there's more of the general public making use of those facilities while the club is running programs, and they do quite a lot of clubs and coaching programs for young people. And I think that also, those young people, when they attend, are not with their parents. So they are unsupervised and they're below the age of 16. And I do think that also raises a risk. So those are the kinds of concerns that I have about this application.
Thank you. Ms. Kilkenny, just for my clarification, are you in support of the application or against? Because from your presentation, I felt like you are supporting the application.
No, I'm against it for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it allows the sale of alcohol to non-members and the sale of alcohol beyond the sale of alcohol beyond the closing times of the pubs in the neighborhood, and the sale of alcohol for off-premise consumption.
But I think there is no sale of alcohol off premises. That's been already said. Is that correct, Mr. Fitzpatrick?
Sir, the application was for on and off the premises, because that's what we believed we should be doing with the application. I said earlier that we're happy for the off sales to be removed completely from this application.
That's it. That's what I understood. So that is not relevant because it's not.
Okay, that's useful to know. I didn't realize that was a decision that was already taken. I still think the sale beyond the opening times of the pubs is a danger for this neighborhood, and I also feel the fact that it's for non-members.
And you also said you saw some issues outside the club, alcoholic related issues, but you have no evidence that they were related to the club. Is that correct?
No, they're definitely related to the club, because when there have been late night events and people leave the club at the end of the event, they loiter outside the gate. They have to get into their cars. They've been drinking, they've been socializing, and there have been some unpleasant behavior, shall we say, of people who've been drinking for several hours, many hours on the premises, and are not behaving in a kind of appropriate, basically jostling, not fighting, but pushing each other around, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to the next objector, and then we'll ask the question at the same time at the end. So the next one is Councillor Oxley.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? First of all, can I just thank the chair, Councillor Ahmed, and the rest of the committee for letting me to speak. My name is Jonathan Oxley. I'm the elected councillor for Hanger Hill alongside two other, including Councillor Zizzy Moss, and I'll be speaking today for both Councillor Zizzy Moss and myself, so everything I'll be saying will be coming from her lips too. And I should say at the outset, I come to this with a great deal of love for the club. I've been personally involved with the club for I guess more than 10 years. I've got both my daughters are junior members of the club and play cricket. And as you've seen from my
can you stay near the microphone, because we do miss hearing you sometime.
A little better.
We'll see.
So yes, I mean, I have a great deal of love for the club, and I agree with many of the comments from many of the, including Mr. Fitzpatrick, about the social value of the club. It's tremendous. It's a tremendous asset for the community. But I think it's very important to clear this point about the necessity of this extension. It seems to me we have a very thriving club. As Mr. Fitzpatrick said himself, there's more than 500 junior members. There's a great deal of income from those members. So there is no necessity for this increase in the licensing laws. And as has been said, the club has been going for more than 150 years without this license extension. So it's not enormous. It's not exactly clear to me why there's a pressing need for this. But moving on to the things which I think are relevant to the test that I think the committee applies, I do believe there is the threat of a public nuisance here. I mean, it is extreme to have a club which is essentially in the middle of a residential area, serving alcohol, 6 Monday to Saturday does seem to me to present a great deal of risk, and there is a great deal of danger of noise pollution. People have got to go to work in the mornings. Children at school, they don't need to be disturbed when we're trying to sleep for work. So I do think that is a consideration that the committee should put a great deal of weight on. And I think it's also a threat to public safety. I mean, the best will in the world, this is not a normal social club of a mixture of genders and age group. When you've got teams there, and Mr. Fitzpatrick mentioned the 6 teams that Ealing have, they're men's teams, I believe. There's only one women's team. So what we're really talking about here is if players are staying after matches to discuss matches with loud amplified music, perhaps till 12, we're talking up to 22 players if the opposition stay and have a drink, plus their friends and invited guests, plus their potentially coaches, managers. It's a very male environment in that respect. And I say that as somebody who's got daughters at the club, because the reality of the girls, there isn't such a vibrant older girls cricketing culture there.
Mr. Oxley, we are not discussing how the club is run. We only need from you any objection related to the licensing objectives. So how the club is run, what they do, that is not really something that we will be considering. So if you can focus your presentation on licensing objectives, please.
With respect, what I'm trying to describe is the context to which this license will be used. And what I'm trying to get across is this is the male-orientated club. So I think, all of us who are on this call know that when groups of young males are together drinking in an environment where they can drink till 12, where there's loud amplified music, potentially Monday to Saturday, is a recipe for disorder. Now, so I do think that is relevant. But moving on, I wanted to just comment on a few of the things which Mr. Fitzpatrick, and just build on them. I don't think it's entirely clear to me how many of these things are. I didn't think it was very non-members thing will be enforced. I don't think it's particularly compelling how enclosure, people being enclosed within the building at 11 works if you're already allowing smokers outside. I can say, as somebody who's attended social events, it routinely people open the doors to go out. I don't know how that the club proposes to enforce. Will escape the building. People who've been inside events which are very noisy will open the doors, go outside. They may have a smoke. They may in a very noisy environment and will be shouting when they go outside, because that's just the way human beings are when they congregate. So I don't find that particularly compelling how any of that is going to be enforced. So I guess the final point I would make is around the license application, trying to have something which is almost in case rationale. I mean, we're almost hearing from the mouths of the applicant that they don't really need this. They just occasions have a license Monday to Saturday until midnight. I really don't think that is a sufficient justification for an extension to their license. And I don't think the same applies to the extension on music.
Your voice is very your voice is very poor, Mr. Oxley, but we can gather what you're saying. We've got what you've said, but it has not been a very clear. Ms. Grant, you want to say anything?
Can I perhaps ask the applicant to mute himself, because I believe when there's noise in the background as well, it drowns out Councillor Oxley. Thank you. That might help a little bit.
Yeah, Councillor Oxley, go on.
Well, I was just summing up, really. I mean, I think I don't think on the grounds of public nuisance and on the threat to public safety that this should be granted. I don't think there's a compelling case around the conditionality that the the applicants made. And as I said at the outset, you know, I think it's a great club. I really don't think after 150 years and a very thriving club that it is today, that there's any necessity for this change.
Thank you. Councillor Gland, you want to ask this stage, or you want to wait until we have completed?
If I may ask Councillor Oxley a question, Chair, that's all right, Jen. Thank you very much.
Please.
Yeah. So thanks, Jonathan. What I want to ask you, I've raised the issue about music. You know, it's not licensable until 11 o'clock. Between 11 and 11:30 is the licensing period. We've raised that. Now, Greg has actually said he realises obviously that it's an old building, it's not soundproofed. He has agreed to put measures in place, sound control measures in place, and to limit the noise. And were you not reassured by that?
I'm not reassured at all, because having attended events, I don't know how the club proposes to enforce that. People routinely, when I've been to birthday parties, people routinely open the doors and go outside. Because if you're inside a contained space and there's a lot of noise, you go outside for a breather. And it's not just smokers, it's just ordinary members who've been invited to that event. So I don't see how that's enforceable.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to the questions a bit later, but I'm going to go to Mr. Gartside for his presentation.
Yes, thank you. So I live right near the boundary of the cricket club on the eastern side. And I'm speaking on my own behalf, but also on behalf of a number of my neighbours who've asked me to represent them at this hearing. I want to note that just 6 months ago, the licensing committee heard an application from the club to extend their hours, and they made a ruling which didn't meet all the requests and limited the extension of hours, although it did give some increase. And at that time, it identified the impact on public nuisance and increased potential for crime and disorder. And the police and the noise prevention team made representations at that committee meeting. I'm not sure what's changed in the last 6 months, why they're not making any contribution.
One second, Ms. Zeb, you want to clarify anything?
Yes, so it's Ms. Zeb, legal advisor to the committee. Mr. Gartside, just to remind you, if I may, Chair, that this application is not in regards to any previous application that may have come before the subcommittee for their consideration, or indeed any of the evidence that would have been brought to the committee's attention. Your representation at this stage is in regards to your objection to this application, and this application only. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm simply calling on that as evidence. Okay, so what we're talking about here 6 months later is a full premises license.
Ms. Zeb, are you?
I haven't quite finished, Mr. Gartside. That evidence is not relevant for the purposes of this committee meeting. This committee meeting will only be dealing with the agenda papers that everyone has received, and indeed any representations made at this hearing. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Gartside, to be very clear, we don't know what happened before. We are only talking about what is in front of us today. So if you can just talk about this, then that would be helpful.
Okay. So I want to reinforce everything that the councillors said in their representation, and I note that the end of their written submission, they said, reject the application in its entirety, and I would like to reinforce that. I would like to particularly focus on the noise aspect. So live and recorded music occasionally at the moment, but will significantly disturb residents. The sound carries remarkably across that field. And it will potentially impact, there are hundreds of households around that cricket ground, bearing in mind that a lot of them are blocks of flats. That, as we've heard, there is no soundproofing in that building. It's an old building. I believe it doesn't even have double glazing, but in fact, soundproofing is a very significant and difficult thing to do with an old building. I also note that in the website where they promote it as a party venue, they talk about access to an outdoor area. So though we've heard quite a lot about closing the doors, I just think on a hot summer's evening, that would be very hard to enforce. And I'd like to just read some of the comments from my neighbours. These are all written in the submissions which you've received. So Miss Winterburn, who's a member of the club, says, the ground acts like an amphitheatre funneling the sound. Miss Baines, I can hear the words in my flat. Mr. Mohammed, it is very loud. Miss Blythe, I hear noise even when my windows are closed. Miss Hurst, the volume of applause and music is already high. It keeps my daughter awake. Sorry, that was Mr. Barrett. Miss Hurst said, the noise was only bearable because I knew it would end at a reasonable hour and I could then sleep, and also knew it was an infrequent occurrence. And then Mr. Hernandez, my daughter is 7 years old. She needs to have a proper rest.
Can you stop for a minute?
Yes.
I think Councillor Kelly is off the camera. Councillor Kelly, can you stay in front of the camera, please? Thank you. Yes, carry on, Mr. Garside.
Okay, so I was just quoting Mr. Hernandez, who talked about his 7-year-old daughter needs to have a proper rest in a place where she can do her homework and develop her interests, which will be hampered by the expected noise from music or live performance, plus people drinking in the vicinity, particularly but not only at the time she should be in bed sleeping. This is a residential area whose main attractiveness is precisely quietness and the lack of disturbing commercial activities. And I just want to finish by quoting the Ealing licensing policy. Paragraph 2.113 on page 57. The licensing authority has weighed up the possible benefits of later hours against the detrimental effects of later hours on local residents and their rights to peace and quiet, and do not accept that later hours are better in the local context. So I would ask you to reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to open it to questions. Mr. Fitzpatrick, do you have any question?
Yes, one or two questions, sir.
Just for clarification, you will have the opportunity to sum it up at the end. So if you have any question, you can ask.
Yes, just one question to the first representative. You said that Ms. Kilkenny, sorry. You said that you were concerned about vision out onto the road, because you said it's effectively a blind spot. Are you aware that the bay window at the function room looks directly out onto the main gate of the pavilion, of the ground, and obviously staff can see quite clearly the main gate from the function room? I just wanted to find out whether you were aware of that.
Actually, if I could respond, yes, I am. In fact, the staff generally stay behind the bar, which is not in the function room. And the function room is really where the guests stay. And I don't think it's appropriate for the guests to be policing people coming onto and leaving the premises. And the other thing is that when it's, say, an evening where you're not actually having a function, but you're just a post-match drinking session, then the function room really is not staffed as such. The staff are behind the bar. And they are not from behind the bar. They have no visibility of what's going on at the gate, none whatsoever.
I'll respond to that when I make my final statement. Thank you. In terms of supervision of juniors, which you say is lacking in the club, Are you aware that we employ on an annual basis, on a permanent basis, a director of cricket and also qualified coaches who are at all the camps and all the training sessions for all the juniors are on hand to supervise the children at all times?
Again, what I'd suggest is my concern is really the access to the toilets area. So I am quite aware, because as I said, I live so close. I'm really aware of your Friday evening activities and your clubs that you operate, etc. But I think if they're members of the public in the bar area, the children will need to interact with them in order to use the toilets. And I don't think that all the children are escorted to the toilets every time they use it. I've observed that not happening.
Any more question?
Yeah, I've got a few. So it's just that I'm just trying to work them out to make sure I ask the right people.
Sure.
Mr. Gartside, well, actually, any of you that have spoken against this application, are you aware of any incidents that have occurred outside of the club, or even inside the club, that have involved the police or the environmental health department in terms of noise pollution?
Anyone can answer this question. Three of you.
I mean, I can say that I'm not aware of anything involving the police. I do note a comment from one of my neighbours where she says there has been issues with noise, which they've turned a blind eye to, was her expression, because it was infrequent.
Okay, the question was only if you saw any police involvement or the environmental health involvement, and you said no. Okay. Mr. Fitzpatrick? Yes, Mr. Oxley? We can't hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I would make that talking about what they want to do in the future with their license. Of course, we don't know if there would be police involvement or environmental issues with later hours. I mean, that's precisely what we're here to discuss. So I'm not entirely sure that that has some consideration, but it's not that relevant.
You can say anything in your summing up, but this is a question time for Mr. Fitzpatrick to ask questions, please. Yes, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Yes, I've covered the safeguarding aspects. I've covered the fact that in terms of my questioning, I've covered the questions that I wanted to ask about any incidents that have occurred in the past. And so I think it's fair for me to ask the representatives of the objectors to agree that obviously they're speculating as to whether there would be any police involvement or environmental health involvement in the future. We don't believe that there will be, but I'm inviting them to agree that it is speculation.
Okay, thank you. My colleagues, Councillor Grant or Councillor Kelly, do you have any question?
No questions for the time being, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Kelly?
Nothing at the moment, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have no questions either. So we will move on to the final stage of summing up. And I'm going to ask the objectors to sum up first, and then I will ask the applicant to briefly summing up. So this is your final opportunity to briefly say a few words to sum it up, please. And I'll start by taking Ms. Kalkani.
Thank you. My summing up statement would be that I believe the cricket club operates as a club very well. It serves its members well with restricted licensing and the ability to do occasional external events. I think that they should not be choosing to operate as a full premises, full licensed premises. I don't think they have the facilities, the staff, or really the location that's appropriate for that. And so I think that the license that they're applying for is beyond what the cricket club requires and should be rejected.
Thank you. Mr. Oxley?
Yes, I mean, I agree with that. And I think what we're seeing here is not an adjunct to what the club has done traditionally, but it's a major departure. This is a very significant change in their licensing. And I don't see any justification for it. The club is viable and successful. And I think there is a big threat, both in terms of public nuisance and noise and crime and disorder. I think it should be rejected.
Thank you. Mr. Garside?
I think Councillor Oxley summarised it. I would like to second what he and the other councillors have said. Thank you.
Thank you. But just for your information, if you, I'm not sure if you're aware, unlike a planning application, any licensing, there are ways if the licensing conditions are not met, council can always come back and revoke the license if the conditions are not met. So it's not like planning, once the application is approved, it's approved. So just for your information. I'll go, yes, Councillor Grant? No, sorry, Mr. Garside?
Well, in reference to that, so that would demand that somebody or some people made a complaint or raised an issue and took it back to the council.
Sure,
yes,
sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Fitzpatrick, your turn to sum it up before we end the meeting.
Yes, sir. On behalf of the club, we firmly believe that this application is required for the business, the ever-changing nature of our business, and we do believe, and I've used the word before, flexibility of the business, in order to make sure that we comply with the licensing laws as they stand at the moment. I've stressed that we are not intending to open the club on a daily basis until midnight, but we need the flexibility. We would like the flexibility to do so if appropriate. We certainly do not intend to have live music events in the club on a daily or a weekly basis. It would be on the basis of very rare functions or special events. We have a fully trained staff. And our staff are responsible for enforcing the license as they already do in terms of the club premises certificate that we have already. If there had been any incidents recorded of any public nuisance or inappropriate behaviour, then these would have been recorded, and the police and others would have objected. There are no objections from the licensing authority or the police or the environmental health at this stage, and I can only stress that with the grant of this, with the premises license, the club and the trustees, the board of directors will do everything in their power to ensure that they comply with the regulations of the premises license, and we would absolutely expect that if that did not happen, then action would be taken against us because we would not be doing the right thing. We therefore believe, as responsible people, that we can and will cope and be able to promote the club in exactly the way that we do at the moment, enhance the facilities, and build on the reputation that Ealing Cricket Club already has. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before we retire to deliberate the application, Ms. Grant, is there anything that you want to clarify before we retire, or you're okay with your notes?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Ms. Zeb, are you okay, or there's anything clarification you need before we retire?
No, the only reminder, Councillor Ahmed, just to give formally, is that all objections that form part of the agenda pack will be taken into consideration when you're coming to your decision.
I have said that in my introduction in the beginning, so that is, again, we are repeating, all the objections will be taken into account when we make the decision. So thank you very much, and we are going to retire, and I anticipate that we will be back at 1:30 to announce the decision. but if there's any changes, then you will be notified. Otherwise, at 1:30, we will see you back. Thank you.